12 signs, 12 worlds, one story, made just for you. Welcome Zodiac Sleep Channel. Find your sign, find your story, sleep, and if you want more, subscribe. We'll be here, every sign, every week, waiting for you. Hello everyone, welcome back to Zodiac Sleep Channel. Tonight's story belongs to Pisces, to the one who feels everything, the one who walks into a room and immediately knows how everyone in it is feeling, not because they asked, not because they were told, but because they simply do, the way fish know the current before it arrives. To the one whose inner world is so vast and so detailed that the outer world sometimes feels like a translation they haven't quite mastered. To the one who has been told more than once that they are too sensitive, as if sensitivity were a flaw, as if the capacity to feel deeply was something to be corrected rather than something extraordinary. Tonight's story is about Inês. She is 25 years old. She is a musician in Lisbon, a fado singer, which is to say she has chosen the only profession in the world that treats longing as a skill. She has just come home from a concert. She is going to sit by her window and listen to the Atlantic and finally let herself rest. Get comfortable. Take a slow breath. Let the ocean carry you tonight. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The last note had hung in the air for longer than she expected. This happens sometimes. The note leaving her body and entering the room, and then doing something she hadn't planned, something that went beyond what she had intended when she drew the breath and opened her mouth and let the sound come. It happened when the song was right and the room was right, and something aligned that she couldn't name or predict, only recognize afterward, the way you recognized weather after it had already changed. The room had been very still. 20 people, maybe 25. The Casa de Fado in Alfama was small, had always been small, had been small, since before Inês was born, would be small long after, and this smallness was not a limitation, but a condition. The way a fado needed a room that could hold it completely, that could contain the particular weight of the music without letting it dissipate into something too large to feel. She had felt the room hold it. She was a Pisces. She had been told by various people at various points in her life that she was too sensitive, too emotional, too much in her feelings, and not enough in the world. She had received this information the way Pisces received most criticism, deeply, completely, and with the particular quality of someone who felt the truth of things even when the things weren't true, who could be wounded by an inaccurate assessment simply because she was constitutionally incapable of dismissing anything without first letting it in. The comment she had let in the most was from a music teacher when she was 17. "You feel too much when you sing," he had said. "It makes the audience uncomfortable." She had thought about this for 8 years. She had concluded, after 8 years, that he was wrong. Not about the feeling. She did feel too much by most conventional standards, by the standards of a world that preferred its musicians technically precise and emotionally contained, but about the discomfort. The audience was not uncomfortable. The audience was moved. There was a difference, and the difference was everything, and Fado understood this difference better than any other music she had ever encountered, because fado had been built on exactly this, the idea that the most honest response to certain kinds of beauty was not composure, but surrender. She had surrendered tonight, and the room had surrendered with her. She walked home through Alfama. The streets were narrow and steep and wet from the evening's rain, and the yellow light from the trams and the lamp posts made everything look like a painting that had been left out in the weather, slightly blurred at the edges, more beautiful for the blurring. She knew every step of this route. She had been walking it for 3 years, since she had moved from the university city of Coimbra to Lisbon with 2 suitcases and a guitar and a particular Pisces certainty that this was where she needed to be, which had turned out to be correct in the way that Pisces certainties often were, not because of logic or planning, but because she had felt it, and feeling things was, for her, the most reliable form of knowledge she had. The Atlantic was somewhere ahead. She could smell it. She could always smell it. Chapter 2. Alfama at night was a different neighborhood from Alfama in the day. In the day, it was a tourist destination. The oldest part of Lisbon, the part that had survived the earthquake of 1755 when most of the rest of the city hadn't, which meant it had a particular quality of age that the rebuilt parts lacked, a density of history in the walls and the steps and the narrow passages that you could feel if you were the kind of person who felt things in spaces, which Inês very much was. At night, it was something else. The tourists went home or went to restaurants, and the neighborhood became itself again. The people who actually lived here, the cats that appeared from nowhere as if summoned by the darkness, the particular sounds of a residential night in an old Portuguese neighborhood, the voices through open windows and the occasional tram and the distant water, and under all of it, always the fado that leaked from the small houses like light from a lamp, not quite fully shielded. She loved Alfama at night. She loved it the way Pisces loved things, completely and slightly overwhelmingly, with the particular quality of feeling that she had never quite learned to moderate. That was either her greatest gift or her greatest liability, depending on who was talking and what they were talking about. The music teacher had said liability. The audience tonight had said gift. She was inclined to believe the audience. She stopped at the Miraduro on the way home. The viewpoint overlooked the river and the city and the bridge that was lit at night, in a way that always made her think of San Francisco, even though she had never been to San Francisco, had only seen photographs, and felt, in the particular Pisces way, that she understood the feeling of a place she had never visited because she had felt it through other people's descriptions and photographs and songs. Pisces were said to have permeable boundaries. She had always found this to be an accurate description of something that was more complicated than it sounded. The permeability was not weakness. It was sensitivity, which was different, which was the thing her music teacher had not understood. Weakness was losing yourself in other people's emotions. What she did was something else. She felt them fully and clearly and then brought them back and made something from them. The way the ocean processed everything that entered it and returned it changed. She was the ocean tonight. She had processed 20 people's worth of feeling in 2 hours of singing. She was ready to be still. She looked at the river for a long time. Then she went home. Chapter 3. Her apartment was on the 4th floor of a building that had stood on this street since the reconstruction after the earthquake, which meant it was old by most standards and young by Alfama standards. And it had the particular quality of Lisbon buildings of this age. The walls thick enough to hold the temperature against the Atlantic cold, the ceilings high enough to make the rooms feel like they breathed, the tiles on the kitchen floor so worn that the pattern had become abstract, a map of all the feet that had crossed it since long before Inês was born. She put her guitar case down beside the door. The apartment was the way she had left it, which was to say, slightly chaotic in the particular way of creative people who had strong aesthetic instincts and inconsistent organizational ones. Books everywhere, some of them open and face down in the way she left books she intended to return to, which was all of them, because she had never once finished a book without immediately opening another. Sheet music on the table and the windowsill and a floor beside the sofa where she sat when she was working through something difficult. A blanket on the sofa that she had not folded since she bought it, because folding it seemed to be optimizing for a tidiness that was not actually how she lived. There were postcards from places she had never been on the walls. This was the thing that people sometimes found strange about her apartment. Not the books or the sheet music or the beautiful disorder of it, but the postcards. 12 of them, from cities and coastlines and mountains that she had never visited, that she had collected over years from secondhand shops and markets, chosen not for the places they depicted, but for the feelings they gave her. The particular quality of light in a photograph of a Norwegian coast that she had looked at every day for 3 years without being able to say exactly what it made her feel except true. Pisces, she had read, lived in more worlds than the one they occupied. She had found this to be the most accurate description of herself she had ever encountered. Not in a mystical sense. She was not mystical, or not more than anyone who paid close attention to the world and noticed how much of it resisted explanation. In the simpler sense that the interior world she inhabited was as detailed and as real as the exterior one. That the places she had imagined were as vivid as the places she had been. That the feelings she had absorbed from other people's music and books and stories had left marks in her that were indistinguishable from the marks left by her own direct experience. She made tea. She took it to the window. Chapter 4. The window faced west, which meant it faced the Atlantic, or as close to the Atlantic as you could face from this apartment. The river first, and then the estuary, and then the ocean itself. Somewhere beyond the darkness and the lights of the bridge and the city on the other bank. She could not see the ocean from here, but she could feel its direction the way she felt most things, not through sight or analysis, but through a kind of orientation, the body knowing where the water was, the way compasses knew where north was. She sat on the windowsill. The windowsill was wide and tiled, the same azulejos that covered the facades of so many Lisbon buildings, the blue and white pattern that she had looked at 10,000 times and still occasionally saw differently, depending on the light and her state of mind and a particular quality of attention she was paying. Tonight, she was paying the kind of attention that came after performance, not heightened attention. The opposite, the particular quality of exhausted openness that happened when she had given everything she had in a room and come home with nothing held back, nothing stored, nothing reserved. She was completely empty in the way that was not deficit, but completion, the way a container felt after it had been emptied of exactly what it was supposed to hold. She thought about the music, not technically. She was not a technical thinker about her music, which some people found troubling, and which she had come to understand was simply how she worked. She did not analyze what she did. She did not deconstruct it. She felt it before she sang it, and felt it during, and felt it after. And the feeling was the knowledge, and the knowledge was enough. Tonight, she had sung a fado about Saudade. This was, in some sense, redundant. All fado was about Saudade, the untranslatable Portuguese word for the feeling of longing for something you may never have had or may never have again. The feeling of absence becoming a presence. The feeling that was the national mood of this city that had sent its ships to the edges of the known world and learned over centuries what it meant to wait for things that might not return. She had felt it completely tonight, not because she was performing it, because it was true. She had felt, standing on that small stage in the candlelight, the particular Pisces quality of being in contact with something ancient and collective, of being a channel for a feeling that did not originate in her, but passed through her and was recognized by 20 people in a small room who had their own versions of the same feeling. She was 25 years old. She had felt things like this her whole life. She had also spent her whole life being told in various ways that the depth of her feeling was a problem. She was done with that. She was done with being told that the ocean was too much. Chapter 5. She thought about what it meant to be a Pisces musician, not in the abstract, in the specific. The way her process worked, which was not like the process of the other musicians she knew, not the methodical ones who worked from theory, not the disciplined ones who practice scales every morning with the devotion of athletes, not even the ones who were also emotional, but emotional in a louder, more extroverted way, whose feelings announced themselves and then were performed. Her feelings didn't announce themselves. They arrived. This was the distinction she had spent years trying to explain to people who asked how she prepared for a performance. And it was a distinction that was very difficult to explain to anyone who hadn't experienced it. She didn't prepare in the conventional sense. She didn't warm up her voice for exactly 30 minutes and then run through the set twice in her head and then stand in the wings thinking herself into the emotional state the songs required. She existed in the emotional state the songs required. She always existed in it. It was not a place she traveled to before a performance and left afterward. It was where she lived. The songs were not depictions of feelings she was accessing on demand. The songs were the feelings translated into a form that could be shared. The feelings she carried all the time made briefly communicable the ocean, briefly visible through the music it had been making all along. This was also, she understood, why she found certain things so difficult. The logistical things, the emails and the bookings, and the communication with venues about technical requirements, and the tracking of the money that came in and the money that went out, which she did badly and knew she did badly and had never quite found a way to do less badly, because the part of her that managed those things was the same part that was supposed to be somewhere between the surface and the depth all the time. And you could not simultaneously be in that place and manage a spreadsheet. You could also not be in that place and protect yourself very well. This was the part that had cost her the most. The permeability that made the music possible was the same permeability that made her absorb other people's moods and needs and crises without quite meaning to, that made her the person people called when they were in pain, because she would answer and she would listen and she would feel what they felt with a completeness that was sometimes useful and sometimes left her carrying things that weren't hers to carry. She was carrying several things tonight that weren't hers. The sound technician who had been unhappy before the show, his mood leaking into the small backstage space and settling into her before she had a chance to process it. The woman in the front row who had been crying from the second song, not because of the music, or not only, she had felt clearly that the crying was personal, that the music had opened something that was already there. She had taken both into the songs with her. This was what she did. This was the Pisces gift and the Pisces weight. She could not leave things at the door. She brought them in and she used them, and they came out in the music, and the music was better for them, and she was afterward carrying their residue. She breathed it out now into the night, into the direction of the ocean. Chapter 6. She had a word for what she felt, not her word, Gaston. She had borrowed it from the city, from the music, from the 400 years of Lisbon that had been feeling this particular thing and naming it before she was born, and would go on feeling and naming it after. But she had made it her own, the way Pisces made most things their own, by feeling them so completely that the distinction between the thing and the feeling of the thing dissolved. Saudade, not sadness. Sadness was too small and too self-contained, too focused on a specific loss with a specific cause. Saudade was larger than that. Saudade was the feeling of longing for something that you couldn't quite locate. Not a person, not a place, not a specific time, but something more like a quality of experience that you had touched once or imagined touching, and that you carried with you as a kind of permanent companion, a beautiful ache that was not entirely unwelcome, because at least it proved that you were capable of wanting something. She had felt this her whole life, before she had the word for it, before she came to Lisbon and found the music that had been waiting for her, that had been made by people who felt what she felt, and had found a way not to cure it, but to honor it, to make something from it that was worth the feeling. She thought about what she was longing for, not a person. She had people she loved, friends who understood her as well as she could be understood, which was not always all the way, but was enough. Not a place. She was in the place she needed to be, not a time. She was not nostalgic for anything specific, did not want to be younger or older or living a different life. She was longing, she thought, for the version of the world in which what she was entirely acceptable. The sensitive one, the feeling one, the one who couldn't manage a spreadsheet and couldn't always answer emails and sometimes disappeared into music for days without quite intending to, and who cried at things that other people walked past without noticing, and who loved when she loved, with the particular Pisces completeness that was either wonderful or terrifying depending on who was on the receiving end. She was longing for a world in which these things were not problems. She was also, she realized, sitting in one, this apartment, this city, this music, the 20 people who had been still tonight because they recognized something in what she was giving them. The woman in the front row, whose own Saudade had been given a shape by Inês's voice. She was already in the world she was longing for. She had built it herself, note by note, night by night. She had just sometimes forgotten to notice. Chapter 7. She moved from the window to the sofa at some point that she didn't quite register. This was how she moved through the world, not always tracking her own transitions, not always certain of the exact moment when one state became another. She had spent years apologizing for this, the way she lost track of time and forgot what she had been about to do, and followed threads of thought or feeling until they led somewhere unexpected, and found herself there without a clear account of how she had arrived. She had stopped apologizing for it. It was how she worked. It was how the music came, the not tracking, the not gripping, the willingness to follow the feeling wherever it went without insisting on knowing in advance where it was going. Most of the best things she had ever written had arrived this way, not planned, not constructed, but followed, like a river that knew something about the landscape that she didn't. She was lying on the sofa. The blanket was over her, which she also didn't quite remember arranging, but there it was. The tea was cold on the table beside her. The guitar case was still by the door. The sheet music on the floor was still where she had left it, waiting for her to return to it tomorrow or the day after, whenever the feeling came back that was required to work with it. The feeling always came back. This was the thing she had learned to trust about herself, the thing that had taken the longest to trust, that the depth was renewable, that the emptiness after a concert was not a depletion, but a completion, and that the well refilled not through effort, but through the same process that had filled it in the first place, living, feeling, paying attention, letting things in. She was good at letting things in. She was learning to be more selective about which things. This was the work. Not to become less porous, not to close herself off, not to build walls around the sensitivity that was the source of everything she did, but to learn the difference between the feelings that were hers to carry and the feelings that were passing through. To let the ocean be the ocean without becoming the ocean. She breathed in and out, outside. Lisbon was settling into its late-night self. The restaurants closing, the tourists retreating, the cats taking over the narrow streets of Alfama with the quiet authority of creatures who knew that the city belonged to them after midnight. She could hear, if she listened carefully, the fado still leaking from somewhere down the hill. She listened, not to analyze it, not to learn from it, not to compare her own voice to whoever was singing it, or to think about what she would have done differently, or what it said about the state of the art form she had devoted her life to. Just to hear it, just to let it be music in the dark, which was what music had always been, which was what it would always be, a sound in the dark that told you you were not alone. She was 25 years old. She had the voice that she had. She felt things as deeply as she felt them. These were not problems. They were her. And she was, she thought now, lying in the dark with the blanket and the cold tea and the faraway fado and the direction of the ocean. She was exactly who she had always needed to be. Not who the music teacher wanted. Not who the spreadsheet required. Not who anyone else's idea of a musician said she should be. Just Inês. Just this. Her breathing slowed. The fado continued down the hill. The Atlantic continued in its direction. The city continued being the city, imperfect and beautiful and ancient and completely itself. Inês slept, not away from the feeling, into it. The way fish moved into deep water, not because it was easier there, but because that was where they were made to be. She slept the way fado sounded, with everything, without apology, completely true. Somewhere in Alfama, in an apartment that faces the Atlantic, the fado has gone quiet. The guitar is by the door. The tea is cold, and Inês sleeps. Not too sensitive, not too much, just exactly herself. The ocean is still there. It will always be there. Good night, Pisces.